The Samsung S90D, as you know it, may be a QD OLED, but in the cases where it's not, it's a W-OLED. And in the 42-inch, 48-inch, and 83-inch sizes, it's always guaranteed to be a W-OLED. So it's important to look at these sizes specifically. And here today, I have a 42-inch S90D, and this will apply to all the models that use a W-OLED. And if you didn't know, you could actually get a W-OLED variant of this TV in 55, 65, or 77, depending on your region. I made a video all about that, talking about how to identify that, but long story short, you just have to look at the last four of the actual letter number combination on the model. So when you see the last four, line that up with the 42, the 48, and the 83 and see if it matches up. If it doesn't, then chances are you have a QD-OLED. If it does, then you probably have a W-OLED. If you're not sure if your region is using a W-OLED or a QD-OLED, make sure you leave a comment and I'll be sure to reply and help you out. Now, the reason why I got the S90D in the 42-inch size is because I wanted to use it as a monitor, but this review is specifically going to be targeting people that are going to be watching it as a TV mostly. I'll touch on it being a monitor somewhat, but I really do want to hit on the TV portion of this because there are versions of this in higher sizes, so it will be important to give this TV some proper love. I'll be honest, I went into this review expecting a full-out downgrade from the QD-OLED variant of this TV, but I was somewhat surprised at the results, and I'm going to get into that in just a second with picture quality, but first let's talk about the inputs on this TV. We have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, 2 USB-A ports, an RF connection, a Ethernet connection, and on this specific size that I'm using, I do have a headphone out, although that may vary from size to size. You of course also have Wi-Fi connectivity here, as well as Bluetooth, so everything you come to expect with most TVs. Speaking of most TVs, I wanted to make sure that this is going to be along the same lines as the QD-OLED variant of the S90D in terms of settings and features, and I will have to say that for the most part, everything is here. You still have all the picture options available, like HDR tone mapping, where you can go between static for a more accurate presentation, or you can go for active for a little bit more of a picture pop presentation to give you that dynamic tone mapping. Really, which one you pick is up to you. You still have all the picture options available like all the other Samsung TVs. You have the new 2024 feature, the color booster. If you're wanting to add a little bit more color to your TV, you could do that with this. And you have things like Game Motion Plus, which is really important for an OLED TV. Now, as far as the smart TV interface, it's still using Tizen OS, just like the S90D QD-OLED version. So you have the same home screen, the same search functionality, and you also have things like the gaming hub here, which is going to allow you to play games using streaming services instead of a console. But now let's get into picture quality, where there is going to be a little bit of a difference from the S90D QD-OLED variant. I mentioned that QD-OLED is going to have higher color brightness, and this is something that you would notice if it is side by side. You do lack a little bit of that color brightness, as if you would put a W-OLED next to a QD-OLED, you're still going to see the same exact result. You're not seeing any magic applied here by Samsung to make the color look a little bit better, although like I mentioned, you do have color booster if you want to juice the colors a little bit more. And for my S90D that I had, the colors looked pretty good as well, pretty spot on. I didn't see any anomalies that would make me think otherwise, and I had it next to a couple of other TVs that happened to look really good out of the box as well. So I don't think many people will have a problem with the S90D, although of course this is going to vary from unit to unit. Same thing with uniformity. The uniformity on this TV was actually not that bad for a W-OLED. Although there is still some vertical banding that you can notice if you really go looking for it in the test patterns, but in actual content, I had trouble seeing it, so that's always a good thing when it comes down to a W-OLED. If you don't see it in real content, then I think that's a W for the W-OLED, no pun intended. One of the other things on W-OLED that you want to look out for is the tinting. And I'm happy to report that there is no green tint on this one specifically that I'm checking out. Now, Again, this is something that can vary from unit to unit. For example, my C4 had it, but my Bravia 8 didn't have it. And I've heard other people's Bravia 8 did have it, but their C4 didn't have it. So it really is going to vary from unit to unit. But I can tell you for a fact, I went looking for it and I did not see it on this S90D. So that's a really good sign. So I use the TV in both HDR and SDR. SDR is pretty much what you come to expect with a W-OLED. It's not very bright, but it still is going to get the job done. It looks really good overall. And since you are probably going to use this as a monitor in SDR, it does hold on to the brightness really well on SDR. It just doesn't get super bright like you would with an LCD TV, for example. All right, so let's talk about using this as a monitor, and then I'm going to get into using it for gaming. One of the first things I wanted to look out for is the TV going to dim while I'm doing basic tasks? I'm happy to report that this is a lot less noticeable on the S90D than it is on the 48-inch C1. It was on the 48-inch C1. It is something that I've gotten used to and I'm not really bothered by no more. But when I first got the C1, it was something that threw me off and I almost wanted to return the TV because of this. Now, the S90D does still suffer from this, but it seems to do a better job of holding on to it longer and not dimming as fast. So yes, if you keep a static image on the screen for a while, it will protect itself, but I didn't find it to be a major hindrance when I was using the TV as a monitor. Also, the HDR performance for this monitor seemed to be pretty good as well. I did test it out in HDR mode. You do want to make sure you tweak it a little bit. If you're ever using the TV for professional work though, I still recommend getting it calibrated, as that's going to be the best bet. As with any display that you're using for commercial work, that's where you're going to want to go with it. But if you're just using it as an everyday productivity monitor and the color work that you're doing isn't super crucial, I think out of the box, this can get the job done for the most part. And I don't think you're going to have any issues. When we're talking about the gaming performance of this TV, it's really good overall. It's not quite to the same level as a QD-OLED, of course, because you're lacking that color brightness. But still, it is an OLED TV, so you're getting that fast response time. And when you're playing games, you get super low latency, and you don't really have any issues at all when it comes down to fast-paced games. And when it comes down to the slower-paced games, 30 frames per second games, this can typically annoy people on OLED-based TVs, but with the ability to have Game Motion Plus, like I spoke on earlier, you can have a solution for this. So your 30 frames per second games can feel a little bit more like 60 frames per second. And this is really important with the quality modes because you have things like performance mode, making the quality of your games just look downright terrible. And no longer will you have to pick between the quality and the smooth experience. In most cases, I use Game Motion Plus and quality mode, so I don't have a problem playing 30 frames per second games when I'm using a Samsung TV with Game Motion Plus. Because Game Motion Plus is motion interpolation for gaming at a low latency, you're not going to have any issues at all playing most games. You are going to be able to play the hardest of games with no difficulty whatsoever. I have played Elden Ring with Game Motion Plus for almost a whole entire playthrough, and I didn't have any problem at all in regards to latency. I also hooked up my gaming PC to this TV and tested out Black Myth Wukong, and I have to say that it was a really smooth experience overall. No issues with Game Motion Plus. And I think that most people can play these games in Game Motion Plus with no issues whatsoever. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the SDR game mode for this TV is really good as well. And peak brightness is not locked out like on LG OLED TVs. So that's always a pleasure to see, much like the Bravia 8 from Sony. So the question remains, are you going to buy this TV or should you buy a different TV? Well, I would say it depends on your use case. When you're talking about this TV as a TV, it looks really good. And if you're debating on if you should get the 83-inch version of this, or if you could find the 83-inch S90C that happens to be $25.99 when it's on sale, that is the extremely good deal when we're talking about a W-OLED TV and an 83-inch size. But I know, it's not a QD-OLED, right? I would say that it's not too much different than like a 77-inch version of the S90D with QD-OLED because, like I said, QD-OLED is really good at the very top level. But when we're talking about it in this level of display, we are looking at it being very similar to a W-OLED in regards to the actual peak brightness performance. But the color brightness, you will still suffer there with W-OLED, so you do have to keep that in mind. That said, it wouldn't be like if you had a S95D W-OLED variant, then we would have kind of an issue there. But the S90D W-OLED compared to the S90D QD-OLED, that difference isn't as dramatic as one would think. So I'm surprised this TV performed as good as it did. I wasn't expecting it to be brighter than the C1, I was expecting it to be about the same, but this comes as a surprise and it makes me want to upgrade to this as my main monitor. But I'm also going to check out a 32-inch QD-OLED from Samsung as a monitor solution as well. That is the G80SD. Stay tuned to the channel for that review and comparison between this TV right here and that monitor. And let me know if you want to see any other type of comparisons as well. I'll see if I can do that. So what do you think of the S90D W-OLED variant? If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you want to keep watching videos, check out this one right here. I think you're gonna like it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one.